His wife texted, "Going on a vacation with my ex, don't be jealous." What he did next crushed her. "Going on a vacation with my ex. Don't be jealous." Those were the exact words Madeline Reed texted her husband before boarding a plane with another man, convinced her husband would spend 2 weeks sulking and missing her. She had no idea that the man feeding mac and cheese to their son at home had already started a countdown timer to her complete annihilation. What unfolded next will make you realize that some people don't get mad, they get methodical. Viewers, what would you do if your partner sent you this message? Would you fight, cry, or plot? Drop your honest reaction in the comments because this story will blow your mind. The rain hit hard against the windows of Nathan Reed's suburban Atlanta home, a 2-story house he had bought years before his marriage. His 6-year-old son Leo sat at the kitchen table, swinging his small legs as he ate mac and cheese, laughing as Nathan made airplane sounds while guiding the spoon toward his mouth. It was their usual father and son dinner, a ritual of comfort and routine, when Nathan's phone buzzed on the counter. The name Madeline glowed on the screen, his wife of 8 years, the woman who had once promised to love him forever, the woman who had given him Leo, the center of his world. Nathan's hand froze halfway to Leo's mouth, a prickle of dread settling in his chest. That instinctive warning you get when you know bad news is coming, the same feeling he'd had 3 months earlier when Madeline suddenly began working late, when her phone calls became whispered and secret, when she started talking vaguely about finding herself and needing space. He opened the text, and the world shifted beneath him. "Going on a vacation with my ex. Don't be jealous." Time seemed to stall. The rain against the windows thundered louder. Leo's cheerful chatter dimmed into silence. Nathan stared at those 11 words that cleaved through everything he thought was solid, reading them over and over as though repetition might somehow change their meaning. Her ex could only be Andrew Bennett, the man who had broken her heart in college when his family dismissed her as not good enough. Andrew had since returned to Atlanta, and Nathan had heard his name more than once in recent months. But what twisted the knife deeper was the knowledge that Andrew was now married to Victoria Caldwell, one of the wealthiest and most influential women in Georgia. Victoria was the true power in the Andrews family, the owner of vast real estate holdings and the head of Caldwell Industries. Andrew was merely her handsome trophy. Madeline had just confessed she was flying off with Victoria's husband. Nathan set the spoon down gently. No shaking hands, no outburst. He didn't yell or break anything. He didn't even let his son see the storm raging beneath his skin. Leo looked up with innocent brown eyes, sensing something was wrong. "Daddy, are you okay? You look weird." Nathan managed a smile, the kind that would become his weapon in the days ahead. "I'm fine, buddy. Just thinking about work. Eat up. We need to make you strong." "Like Superman?" "Exactly like Superman." He picked up his phone and typed a reply with steady, unhurried fingers. "Enjoy your vacation and take your time." The response from Madeline came quickly. "That's it? No questions? No begging me to stay?" Nathan's smile widened, though it was not a smile of affection. "Why would I? You're grown. Make your own choices." Her typing indicator blinked, vanished, blinked again, then finally produced a reply. "I'll be gone for 2 weeks, maybe longer." Nathan answered without hesitation. "Take as long as you need. Leo and I will be just fine." Madeline placed her phone aside, satisfied she had silenced her husband into meekness. She had no idea that she had just handed Nathan the very rope he would use to hang her with. That night, after Leo had drifted into the kind of deep, innocent sleep only a 6-year-old could manage, Nathan sat in the dim glow of his kitchen. His laptop screen was open, but he wasn't working. His eyes were fixed on the single message displayed on his phone, the message that would unravel his marriage and give him the cold clarity he hadn't known he was capable of. "Going on a vacation with my ex. Don't be jealous." 11 words. Casual, careless, cruel. Nathan leaned back in his chair, staring into the silence of the house he had bought years before Madeline entered his life. The refrigerator hummed softly, the rain tapped against the windows, and from upstairs he could hear the faint, rhythmic breathing of his son asleep. It was in that quiet that Nathan realized he wasn't devastated. He was resolute. He would not rage. He would not beg. He would dismantle her world with the same precision he used to build his business. By sunrise, he was already sitting in the sleek downtown office of Robert Hayes, a family attorney he had known through business contacts. Hayes was a tall, lean man with graying hair and a reputation for being ruthlessly efficient in the courtroom. Nathan placed his phone on the desk without a word, the message glowing like a loaded weapon. Hayes adjusted his glasses, read the text once, then twice, before slowly exhaling. She really put this in writing? Last night, Nathan said evenly. She told me she'll be gone for at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. She left Leo behind without a second thought. Hayes leaned back, steepling his fingers. Nathan, this isn't just reckless, this is abandonment. She has effectively confessed in her own words to leaving her 6-year-old to pursue an extramarital relationship. Judges don't need much more than this. We can file for emergency temporary custody immediately. Do it, Nathan replied, his tone flat but firm. By mid-morning, the petition had been filed. Within hours, Hayes secured a same-day hearing. At 2 o'clock sharp, Nathan stood in Fulton County Family Court, the message projected on a large monitor as evidence. Judge Harrison, a man with tired eyes and decades of experience, studied the words carefully. Mrs. Reed is not present, the judge said, but her absence only reinforces the claim of abandonment. A mother who chooses to leave her child for 2 weeks to vacation with another man has clearly neglected her parental responsibilities. Temporary custody is hereby granted to Mr. Nathan Reed, pending full hearing. The gavel came down with a sharp crack, final and heavy. Nathan let out a slow breath, his jaw tightening as the weight of what had just happened sank in. In less than 12 hours since receiving that message, he had secured legal custody of his son. Madeline thought she had sent a taunt to wound him. Instead, she had signed the first document of her own destruction. As they walked out of the courthouse, Hayes clasped his client's shoulder. She's just handed you every advantage, Nathan. Every day she remains gone will strengthen your case. By the time she steps foot in this courtroom, she'll already have lost. That evening, Nathan stood in the kitchen again, cooking grilled cheese for Leo while cartoons played in the background. His phone buzzed. Another message from Madeline lit the screen. The weather here is perfect. You should try living a little instead of working all the time. Nathan stared at it for a moment. He could almost hear her smugness, imagining him sitting alone, seething while she basked in tropical sunshine with another man. She had no idea he had just walked out of court with custody papers in his hand. He typed back slowly. Glad you're having fun. Leo is fine. He set the phone down and turned the sandwich in the pan. Across the table, Leo laughed at the cartoon characters, oblivious to the war his father was quietly winning on his behalf. Madeline thought she was on vacation. The custody order had been signed only a day earlier, but Nathan knew that securing Leo on paper was just the first step. Madeline was still drinking cocktails under a foreign sky, still sending her smug little messages as though she had scored some sort of victory. She had no idea that her absence had already stripped her of her parental rights, and she certainly had no idea what Nathan planned to do next. If she thought she could vanish for 2 weeks with another man and then return to her comfortable life, she was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, Nathan dressed in a pressed shirt, shaved carefully, and walked into the branch of the bank that held every cent of their joint accounts. He carried with him not only the emergency custody order but also the steady determination of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. The bank manager, a woman named Linda, who had known Nathan for years, rose from behind her desk when she saw him. "Mr. Reed," she said warmly, though her eyes flicked toward the official court document in his hand. "What can I do for you today?" Nathan placed the custody order on her desk and spoke with deliberate calm. I need to secure my son's future. That means freezing every joint account immediately and transferring the balances into new accounts under my name, with a custodial trust for my son. My wife abandoned him. I now have legal custody. Linda scanned the document, her pen tapping softly on the desk as she confirmed the judge's signature and case number. Finally, she nodded. This is clear. With temporary custody in place, the bank is obligated to act in the child's interest. We'll close her access, freeze the joint accounts, and create new ones in your name only. Any cards linked to her profile will stop working within 24 hours. Nathan inclined his head slightly. He wasn't gloating, he wasn't smiling. This was not triumph, it was precision. He was simply ensuring that when Madeline ordered her next glass of champagne on the beach, the world would answer her with silence and decline notices. The entire process took 2 hours. Every account number changed, every debit card deactivated, every line of credit shifted under Nathan's control. When he walked out of the bank, the financial artery that had nourished Madeline's lifestyle was gone. That evening, while Leo raced toy cars across the living room rug, Nathan's phone buzzed. A photo lit up the screen, Madeline smiling on a balcony, the turquoise ocean stretching behind her. Wish you were here. The food is amazing. Nathan didn't reply. He placed the phone face down on the coffee table and watched his son laugh, the innocence in his eyes making Nathan more determined than ever. In a few hours, Madeline would discover what it felt like to live without access to his hard-earned security. But Nathan wasn't done. Cutting her off financially was only one stage. He needed evidence, clear, damning evidence, that would burn in court and destroy any chance she had of spinning herself as the victim. He picked up the phone again, this time dialing a number he hadn't called in years. James Mitchell, a private investigator whose reputation stretched from boardrooms to courthouses, answered on the second ring. Nathan Reed, Mitchell said, his gravelly voice betraying both recognition and curiosity. What can I do for you? I need surveillance, Nathan said. My wife is on vacation with another man. I want photographs that a judge can't ignore. Who's the man? Andrew Bennett. There was a pause. The husband of Victoria Caldwell? Yes. Mitchell whistled softly. That changes everything. Victoria Caldwell is the power behind Caldwell Group, one of the largest private conglomerates in Georgia. Andrew may carry her last name in society, but in reality, she owns everything. If she finds out, Mitchell's voice trailed off. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Nathan interrupted, his tone level. How fast can you locate them? Give me her number, any recent flight info, and I'll have them pegged within 48 hours. 72, I'll have photographs you can blow up on a courtroom projector. They won't be able to deny a single thing. Do it! He ended the call and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling fan slowly turning above. He imagined Madeline clinking glasses with Andrew, laughing as though she had traded up. He pictured Andrew smirking, believing he'd stolen another man's wife. And then Nathan pictured Victoria Caldwell, a woman who commanded billion-dollar boardrooms, opening a manila envelope of incriminating photographs. It was only a matter of time. By the time Nathan tucked Leo into bed that night, his plan was already tightening like a noose. Madeline thought she had escaped into paradise. What she didn't realize was that every drink she sipped, every kiss she shared, and every careless laugh on that foreign beach was being documented, preserved, and delivered straight into the hands of the one woman powerful enough to obliterate Andrew's world. Madeline thought she had found freedom. In truth, she had signed the opening act of her own ruin. The morning after securing Leo's future and freezing the joint accounts, Nathan woke with the same calm determination that had carried him through the courthouse and the bank. One victory wasn't enough. Custody was secured on paper, finances were locked away, but there was still too much of Madeline's presence in the house. The perfume bottles on the vanity, the dresses filling half the closet, the framed photographs of vacations she had long since stopped cherishing. Every trace of her existence in that home reminded him of betrayal. Nathan knew exactly what came next. He called Atlanta Premier Moving Services, one of the most discreet firms in the city, the kind used by executives and families in transition. He gave clear instructions, full pack-out of designated items, immediate delivery to Marietta. He didn't need to say more. They had handled messier dissolutions than his. By noon, the truck was parked at the curb. The neighbors peeked through curtains, curious. 3 uniformed movers carried boxes and packing tape inside, their efficiency almost military. Nathan walked them through the house with a steady voice, pointing out what was hers. Everything feminine in the master bedroom, he said. Closet, vanity, all jewelry, perfumes, the nightstand on her side of the bed, the photograph frames where she's pictured alone. Leave the ones with my son. The men nodded and set to work. Dresses slid from hangers into garment bags. Jewelry clinked softly as it was folded into velvet boxes. The smell of her perfume lingered in the air as bottles were wrapped in tissue paper and tucked into cartons. From the bathroom, drawers opened and closed, makeup and lotions disappearing into cardboard. By 3 o'clock, the living room was lined with neatly sealed boxes, each marked in black marker. Madeline, bedroom, Madeline, bathroom, Madeline, personal. 8 years of marriage reduced to cardboard, taped and stacked like cargo waiting for shipment. Final load, Mr. Reed, the crew chief said, wiping his brow. Nathan handed him an envelope of cash and a folded slip of paper. Deliver to this address, 47 Oak Ridge Drive, Marietta. Leave everything on the front porch. The truck rumbled away, carrying with it the last traces of Madeline from the house. Nathan stood alone in the transformed master bedroom. The closet looked cavernous without her dresses, the vanity bare, the air strangely clean. For the first time in months, the space felt his again, quiet, uncluttered, honest. That evening, James Mitchell, the private investigator, called with his update. Located them. Cancun Resort, registered under Andrew Bennett's name. 1 week after Madeline's careless message detonated in his kitchen, 7 days of custody filings, bank freezes, moving trucks, and silence, James Mitchell arrived at Nathan's front door carrying a manila envelope that felt like it could tilt an empire. Nathan waited until Leo was busy in his room before spreading the contents across the coffee table. Photographs spilled out in sequence, Madeline's hand resting intimately on Andrew Bennett's chest during a candle-lit dinner. The pair strolling arm in arm beneath palm trees, faces tilted toward each other with the comfort of old lovers. Their bodies pressed close on a private balcony, shadows cast by hotel lanterns. And then the anchor shot. A beach at dusk, sky rinsed in orange and violet. Madeline, her neck glinting with the diamond necklace Nathan had once bought her, laughing as Andrew kissed the hollow of her throat. The world could not mistake what it was seeing. Mitchell slid supporting documents across the table, receipts, time-stamped logs, an itinerary printed under Andrew's name with dinner reservations circled. You asked for courtroom quality, he said, his voice even. This is 7 days of documented behavior. Any judge, any jury, any spouse, it will hold. Nathan gathered the worst of the photographs into a new envelope, wrote a single name across the front in clean block letters. Victoria Caldwell. Caldwell Tower glittered like a spear above Peachtree Street. Nathan entered the marble lobby, stated his purpose, and minutes later was escorted up a private elevator to the 60th floor. Victoria Caldwell's office exuded power without ornament. Windows framed the Atlanta skyline. Art worth more than houses hung on limestone walls. At the desk sat Victoria herself, silver hair perfectly coiled, her posture impeccable, her eyes sharp enough to cut. You have something for me? She asked. Nathan set the envelope before her. She opened it with slow precision, drawing out each photograph. She did not gasp. She did not curse. Her expression cooled by degrees as she paged through evidence of her husband's week-long betrayal. When the last photo lay flat on her desk, she stacked them neatly, tapped them into alignment, and finally lifted her gaze. Who are you? Nathan Reed. The woman is my wife. Her voice dropped to something low and steady. How long? A week, documented. She told me she'd be gone too. Victoria considered this in silence, the weight of her fury hidden behind the calmest mask in Atlanta. Then she picked up her phone, dialed a single number, and placed it on speaker. Andrew's voice came through, casual and smiling. "Victoria, didn't expect to hear from you. I told you this Miami trip might—" "You have 24 hours to return to Atlanta," Victoria said, her tone even and cool. "If you don't bother coming back at all." The line went silent. Andrew stammered, "Victoria, She ended the call before he could finish. Sliding the photographs back into the envelope, she handed it to her assistant without another word. Then she looked at Nathan, her eyes steady, her voice stripped of any warmth. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. You've given me what I needed." Nathan inclined his head. "You deserved the truth." He left Caldwell Tower as the late sun bled across the glass facade, his reflection small against the tower that bore Victoria's name. Behind him, the gears of something larger than he could control had already begun to turn. "They're not being discreet? I'll have photos by the end of the week." "Make sure they're clear," Nathan said. "No ambiguity." Mitchell's chuckle was dry. "Trust me, they're not exactly hiding in shadows. You'll have images good enough to hang in a courtroom gallery." When Nathan hung up, he glanced at his phone. Dozens of missed calls and voicemails sat unanswered. None from Madeline. They were from her parents. He knew why. The movers had unloaded every box onto their porch that afternoon. Her parents had been blindsided by the sight of their daughter's life piled in cartons. They had been trying to reach her all day. But Madeline had silenced her main number on the first night of her trip, boasting to Andrew that she didn't want distractions. That choice, made in arrogance, had cut her off from the very people who might have softened the blow. Across the ocean, Madeline lay on a resort chaise, sunglasses tilted against the sun, posting filtered photos of cocktails and sunsets. She had no idea her clothes were stacked in her parents' garage, her marriage reduced to taped boxes, her husband walking through rooms cleansed of her presence. She thought she was escaping. What she didn't realize was that she was being erased. The call had ended with nothing more than a sentence. "You have 24 hours to return to Atlanta. If you don't bother coming back at all." No threats, no explanation, just an ultimatum. Andrew sat frozen at the restaurant table, his knuckles white around his phone, the hum of the ocean and the laughter of other diners receding into a hollow roar in his ears. "Andrew?" Madeline asked, leaning forward. "What is it? What did she say?" He didn't answer. His mouth had gone dry. Victoria never wasted words. If she had issued an order, it was because consequences had already been set in motion. "I need to leave," he muttered finally, pushing his chair back. Madeline blinked. "Leave? You mean tonight?" "I said I need to leave." His voice cracked like glass. He shoved a wad of bills onto the table, grabbed his jacket, and stalked toward the exit. "Andrew, wait!" she called after him, drawing stares from the other tables. "What's going on? You're scaring me." But he didn't turn. By midnight, he had thrown clothes into his suitcase, ignoring Madeline's pleas and questions. "Just tell me what she said," she demanded, blocking the doorway. He shoved past her, eyes wild. "Don't call me. Don't follow me. Stay here if you want. I don't care." And then he was gone, leaving her in the luxury suite they had shared, staring at his half-empty closet and the imprint of his shoes on the carpet. For the first time since she had sent that reckless message to Nathan, a coil of dread began to tighten in Madeline's chest. Andrew's flight landed in Atlanta just before dawn. His Uber crept up the long drive to the Caldwell estate, its iron gates glowing under floodlights. He expected Victoria to be waiting in the foyer, perhaps icy but forgiving once he groveled enough. He rehearsed apologies under his breath, desperate words about mistakes and love and second chances. Instead, he found Victoria standing at the gates themselves, not alone, but flanked by two attorneys in tailored suits. A third man in a security jacket stood beside them with a clipboard. "Victoria," Andrew began, dragging his suitcase behind him. You're late," she said, her voice level. "Sign here." One of the attorneys thrust a stack of papers into his hands. The first page bore the title Petition for Divorce. The second, Asset Freeze Order. The third, Restraining Notice, Caldwell Group Properties. His own signature was nowhere. Victoria's was already inked in elegant black. "What is this?" His voice broke as he flipped through page after page, each more suffocating than the last. "This," Victoria said coolly, "is the end of your business trip." "Victoria, please." "You have 30 minutes," she continued, cutting through his words, "to collect whatever personal belongings you can carry. After that, your access codes will be disabled. You will not step foot on this property again." The gates behind her began to swing inward, not for him, but for a waiting moving van that would ferry his things to a storage facility under lock and inventory. Andrew's knees nearly buckled. He pressed the stack of papers to his chest as though clutching them could hold his life together. "You can't do this," he whispered. Victoria's expression didn't flicker. "I already have." The attorneys turned away, already speaking into phones, setting motions into courthouses and bank systems. The security officer checked his watch, noting the countdown of Andrew's 30 minutes. Andrew staggered through the gates, suitcase dragging, head bowed. The mansion loomed in darkness, lights off, windows sealed. It was no longer his. Every step echoed with the knowledge that his life had been dismantled before his plane had even touched down. By the time the sun rose, Andrew Bennett, once the man who had lured Madeline Reed away with promises of old passion and new wealth, was homeless, stripped of access, and carrying nothing more than a suitcase and a stack of papers that marked him as discarded. Meanwhile, Madeline awoke alone in Cancun. The bed beside her was cold, Andrew's side of the closet emptied, his toiletries gone from the sink. She searched the suite in disbelief, called the concierge, and learned that Mr. Bennett had checked out during the night. "What?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He paid in cash, ma'am," the concierge said gently. "Said he was leaving immediately." Madeline stared out at the turquoise horizon, her stomach hollow. She thought she had escaped into a dream. Instead, she had been abandoned in paradise with no husband beside her, no messages from Nathan, and parents who hadn't reached her in a week. And somewhere in Atlanta, her ex-lover was learning what it meant to cross a woman like Victoria Caldwell. Madeline had not slept in 2 days. She sat hunched on the edge of the hotel bed in Cancun, Andrew's absence heavy in the silence around her. The concierge's words replayed in her head like a cruel refrain. "He checked out during the night, ma'am. Paid in cash. Said he was leaving immediately." Her phone, once buzzing with messages, had gone eerily quiet. Nathan had not replied to any of her texts in over a week. Her parents' calls, routed to the secondary line she barely checked, had stacked up unanswered. Even Andrew's number now rang into nothing, as though he had been erased from existence overnight. When the resort staff politely informed her that the room balance was due and the card on file had declined, she scrambled. After hours of humiliation at the front desk, she pulled out her last reserve, a debit card linked to the small personal savings account she had kept hidden from Nathan. The balance wasn't much, but it was enough to cover the bill and buy a one-way flight home. She told herself she'd land in Atlanta, smooth things over, cry if she had to. Nathan was a kind man. He'd never let her twist for long. Maybe Andrew's absence would even work in her favor. If she returned contrite, Nathan might forgive her for Leo's sake if nothing else. That was the story she repeated to herself as the plane cut through the clouds and the Atlanta skyline rose on the horizon. But the moment her Uber turned onto her familiar street, the story cracked. The lawn, once manicured under Nathan's steady care, now bore a bright red "Sold" sign, staked firmly into the earth like a marker at a grave. 2 unfamiliar cars sat in the driveway. Through the front window she glimpsed shadows moving, children running, a woman carrying dishes, laughter spilling out as though the house had always belonged to them. Madeline stumbled from the car, dragging her suitcase behind her, her breath catching in her throat. She rushed to the door, jamming her key into the lock, twisting hard again and again. Nothing. The tumblers had been changed. The house did not know her anymore. She pounded on the door until the woman she'd glimpsed in the window appeared. Can I help you? The stranger asked, her tone polite but firm, protective. This is my house, Madeline gasped. I live here, my husband. The woman shook her head. I'm sorry, but we bought this house last week. The realtor said the previous owner had already moved out. Madeline's legs gave way. She collapsed onto the porch steps, clutching her suitcase as if it could tether her to a past that had already slipped away. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A text from her mother. Madeline, where have you been? Your boxes are here. We've been calling you for days. Come home immediately. Her heart thudded. Boxes. She flagged down the Uber again, voice shaking as she gave her parents' address. The drive to Marietta felt like a funeral procession. Every mile dragged her further from the life she had built and closer to the childhood she had once longed to escape. When the car finally stopped, she saw them. Rows of cardboard boxes stacked neatly along the porch, labeled in thick black marker. Madeline. Bedroom. Madeline. Bathroom. Madeline. Personal. 8 years of marriage reduced to packing tape and corrugated cardboard. Her mother, Helen, opened the door before she could knock. Her eyes were tired, rimmed with sleepless worry. Madeline, she whispered, what have you done to your life? Inside, her father Richard sat at the kitchen table, spectacles perched on his nose, a thick envelope of legal papers spread before him. He didn't look up as she entered. These came today, he said, his voice flat, devoid of comfort. Madeline's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Petition for divorce, custody filing, evidence exhibits. The first page alone knocked the air from her lungs, grounds for dissolution, abandonment, and adultery. She turned another page and found her own words reproduced in stark black ink. Going on a vacation with my ex. Don't be jealous. A message she had typed in seconds now served as the cornerstone of her undoing. Behind it came the photographs, grainy in places but devastatingly clear. Her face, her laughter, her hand clasped with Andrew's. Every moment of her fantasy captured, documented, and weaponized. Madeline pressed a hand to her mouth, the room tilting around her. No, she whispered. This can't be happening. Helen reached for her shoulder, but Madeline jerked away, staring down at the papers as though sheer will could erase them. I need a lawyer, she croaked, the words hollow even as she spoke them. With what money? Richard asked, his gaze hard. The accounts are drained. Your credit cards don't work. That man left you stranded and Nathan has already moved on. All you've got left is us, and boxes. Madeline sank into a chair, the paper trembling in her hands. The vacation she thought would liberate her had become the chain that bound her to ruin, and tomorrow the courts would make it official. The following week, Madeline stood outside Fulton County Family Court in a borrowed navy dress from her mother's closet. The hem was slightly too long, the fabric dated, but it was the only thing she had left that resembled dignity. Her own clothes, the ones she had once flaunted like armor, sat folded in cardboard boxes in her parents' garage. Her lawyer had canceled on her that morning, citing non-payment of retainer. With no money, no access to joint funds, and no credit card that still worked, Madeline had been forced to accept a public defender appointed at the last minute. He shook her hand stiffly, introduced himself as Daniel Grayson, and admitted within minutes that he'd only skimmed her file. Inside the courtroom, Nathan stood at the opposite table with Robert Hayes at his side, calm as ever. He wore a gray suit, freshly pressed, his posture steady. Leo sat with a guardian ad litem in the gallery, swinging his feet, a quiet smile on his face as if the storm around him couldn't touch him. Judge Harrison entered, adjusted his glasses, and called the case. Hayes rose first. Your Honor, the matter before us is simple. My client, Nathan Reed, seeks permanent custody of his 6-year-old son and dissolution of his marriage on the grounds of abandonment and adultery. The evidence speaks for itself. He clicked a remote, and the large monitor flickered to life. The first slide displayed a screenshot of Madeline's text message. Going on a vacation with my ex. Don't be jealous. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. This Hayes continued, is not rumor. It is her own words. She declared her abandonment of her child in writing. She confirmed the presence of her extramarital partner, and she stated her intention to extend her absence indefinitely. He clicked again. Photographs filled the screen. Madeline and Andrew on the beach, in restaurants, entering suites. Each image was stamped with date and time, courtesy of James Mitchell's surveillance. This documentation covers 1 full week of conduct, Hayes said. While my client was home caring for their child and filing for custody, Mrs. Reed was vacationing with another woman's husband. That woman, as the court is aware, is Victoria Caldwell of the Caldwell Group. The collateral damage has already shaken households and corporations alike. But we are not here for gossip. We are here for the welfare of a child who was left behind. Grayson rose, shakily, clearing his throat. Your Honor, my client was under emotional distress. She needed space to think. Judge Harrison cut him off with a weary hand. Counselor, a mother may need space, but she does not abandon a 6-year-old child without provision, and she certainly does not document her decision in text and photographs. Hayes pressed the advantage. We are asking the court for full custody, confirmation of property rights, and denial of alimony. The house in question was purchased by Mr. Reed prior to the marriage and thus remains his sole property. The accounts have been restructured under legal advisement to protect the child. Mrs. Reed has no claim. The judge leaned forward, scanning the file before him. The evidence of abandonment is overwhelming. Custody is awarded to Mr. Reed. Visitation rights for Mrs. Reed are suspended pending psychological evaluation. The marital home remains the sole property of Mr. Reed. Financial claims are denied. Divorce is granted. The gavel came down, and the sound echoed like a nail sealing a coffin. Nathan turned, reached for Leo's hand, and smiled gently at his son. Come on, buddy. Let's get that ice cream I promised. They walked out together, sunlight spilling across them through the courthouse doors. Madeline remained frozen in her seat, her hands clutching the edge of the table, her vision swimming. She had come with nothing, and she was leaving with less than nothing. That evening, back in her childhood bedroom surrounded by the boxes of her dismantled life, an envelope slid under her door. She tore it open with trembling fingers. The letter inside was brief, written in Nathan's precise hand. You told me not to be jealous. I'm not. Leo is safe. The house was never ours. It was mine before you ever came. You wanted freedom, and now you have it. Enjoy the life you chose alone. The paper slipped from her hands. Madeline collapsed against the bed, her sobs muffled by the very quilt her mother had stitched for her when she was a child. She had gambled her family for a fantasy and lost everything in the space of 2 weeks. Nathan had not shouted. He had not struck her. He had not even raised his voice. He had simply dismantled her world piece by piece, using her own words as the rope with which she hung herself. Do you think Nathan Revenge was brutal? What would you have done if you were in his shoe? Drop your thought in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting and true-to-life stories.